Hello, and welcome to another episode of For the Love of Sports. My name is Michael Raziel, and this is the show where we get to talk about sports, we get to talk about business, and we get to talk about everything in between. Wherever you're listening, however you're listening, you know exactly what to do. Like and subscribe over on YouTube, 5-star review on Spotify, 5-star review, and say something really nice about me and my incredible guest. I have Tyler Webb today. He's the co-founder at Uncle Charlie Marketing. Tyler, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, Michael. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure's all mine. I also didn't say that last part. 5-star review and say something nice about me and Tyler on Apple, please.
Yes, please.
Tyler, you tell them, please, for me.
Please go. I'll let you save your judgments until the end. But if you enjoy your listening experience, I would love if you said something nice about Michael and I and his fantastic show.
Beautiful. Thanks, Tyler. You're a natural at this, aren't you? We'll get to that in a little bit. Tyler obviously knows what he's doing here. Podcasting space, content creation space, YouTube, TikTok. We'll get to all the followers, Twitter. Dude's been all over the place, especially in the sports world. Very excited to get to talk to him about each and every piece of his content creating and marketing, and especially marketing, baseball marketing. Baseball is my favorite sport. Spring training, it's here,
Good
boys.
to hear.
It's here. It's here. Tyler, first question I have for everybody on the For the Love of Sports podcast is, why do you love sports so much?
Oh man, sports for me growing up were a way to scratch a competitive itch that I had. I grew up with two younger brothers. So I was the oldest of three boys, which bred, as you can imagine, some natural competition. And for me, it was just a great way to kind of find this like edge within myself that I've now been able to carry into, other hobbies. Maybe you could call me somebody that takes things too seriously, but it was just a great outlet for that sort of, that sort of thing. Right. And I also just really appreciated the camaraderie. I think oftentimes us as men struggle to express what we're feeling or, express what we're interested in. And we just use sports as a vehicle to share some, emotions or moments that are special to us. And so that's why I always relied on it for. And now that I get to do this full time, I really love drawing out those stories or those pieces of connective tissue that, help bridge the gap between two people who might never think they have anything in common. But if it's sports, that can be the thing that brings them together. I love drawing those common threads that help us remember that we're all, much more alike than we are different. And, if it's rooting for our favorite team that's similar, that makes us realize that, then so be it.
Too many people forget we're literally all in this together. Like it's very frustrating to hear hatred and vitriol. I think that's a word the news likes to use a lot. I don't watch the news. I'm pretty sure they love to use that word though. It doesn't make any sense. We're all in this together. We all should be trying to help each other rather than tearing each other down. So I totally agree with you there. Finding common grounds, the Mets, baseball, football, the Super Bowl, hating the Eagles. Like these are easy things that pretty much anyone can get on board with, right? Hating the Eagles, that's like the easiest thing on planet Earth at this point, right? Yeah,
and I think it's a really important reminder, too, that as serious as we feel like those things are, so I'm a Green Bay Packers fan, I remember when they won the Super Bowl in 2010, like that felt like the most consequential day in my entire life, and I was just 11 years old. But as serious as we feel like those things are, it's a great reminder that they're not at the end of the day. The Packers can go 9-8, lose to the Lions at the end of the year, barely miss out of the playoffs. All they have to do is win one game. And I wake up the next morning and I say, you know what? I'm still alive. I still have people that love me. I still have all these things going for me in life where maybe in the moment that felt like a really important thing, but at the end of the day, it's not. And so I think it's just a great, reminder for us all that it's okay to care about things. It's okay to be passionate. It's okay to, have a friendly rizzing with somebody or a friendly razzing or, talk some crap online. But at the end of the day, it's, it's not as serious as we make it out to be. And there are much more serious issues in the world. And it's nice to have an escape from those from time to time.
Exactly. And sports absolutely does provide that. I would say maybe not at the end of the day, maybe at the end of like 3 or 4 days, I can usually get over some of those really tough losses. And then sometimes they kind of creep back in and they get me. And I remember, and my heart hurts again. But I do realize, in the grand scheme of things, this literally means nothing, if we were really honest about it.
Yeah, I'll do the thing where I avoid podcasts or, I listen to a lot of sports shows and I'll avoid after a heartbreaking loss for a while. And then they'll still find a way to sneak it in, or maybe I accidentally go back to the episode that I shouldn't have. And it's like peeling off a scab a little too soon. But
then there's the opposite, right? Like when you have that big win, I want to consume content for 24 hours. I want to soak it in. And for me, again, hate the Philadelphia Eagles. I literally tuned into. I'm here in the New Jersey area. I tuned into Philly radio for like 3 days to listen to all the callers. And I just sat there with a smile on my face, and my wife's like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you such a psycho? It's like, there's literally nothing like this. Listening to these people cry and complain, and like, it brings me so much joy. And I watch the press conferences after big win, like the whole thing. I soak it all up. I love it.
Yeah, there's a little Schadenfreude in all of us, and I think it feels good. Yeah,
especially with rivals, you have to. And going back to the first point that you made about expressing our feelings, I would say the times that I cry the most is when I look at Mike Trout's baseball reference page or Barry Bonds' baseball reference page. Those like legitimately, like I don't cry. My eyes well up though, just thinking of how lucky we are to have been able to watch two of the greatest baseball players of all time. How lucky we are to be able to see these things, the stories, everything that went behind it. And just seeing all those ridiculous numbers, be like, how many walks did he have in 2004? That's ridiculous. Why? No one should ever have that. And I love it. There's nothing, I can't do anything about it.
I totally agree with you. And I think the part that I love even more, and this is just another callback to how we as men talk with other men, but I'll have instances where I'm catching up with old high school friends, and we'll just go back and forth talking about random Milwaukee Brewers that played growing up. And it's almost a competition as to who can name the most obscure player or the most obscure moment that we remember from some irremarkable season otherwise. And it's like the most fun that we have, or a peeve that I personally have with some of my friends is their incessant recollection of fantasy football matchups. And similar extent, like the stuff doesn't matter. Maybe you're playing for a little bit of money, mostly pride, but their ability to recall a matchup we had our junior year of high school, or a trade that I got screwed over my freshman year of college. And it's, all these years later. And it's like, that's kind of stuff, however it can be a vehicle for us to stay connected or an icebreaker for us to feel comfortable talking about. It's like my favorite thing in the world. And you take a step back and you realize it's so innocent. It's so pure. You hope that it can stay that way in a way that's like uncorrupted and just like, again, I'll go back to the word of just so unserious that you can just fully find yourself enjoying being a part of it. And there's this like collective sense of community really when you're a part of it. And it's just like not unlike anything else that I've ever found.
Find your tribe, man. We're all just looking for a tribe. And fantasy football and fantasy baseball is coming up. I can't wait for that draft. The Mets, we're all part of a community. And sports makes it very inherent and very easy to be a part of that community no matter what it is. Like or hate, as we kind of been talking about, easy things, staying connected with old friends in some way, shape, or form. It's always the easiest thing in the world when you just say, hey, game's on. Do you want to watch? Eat some chicken wings, drink some beer. Doesn't make it any pretty easy conversation. Who says no there? But no, man. And I think one thing that I'm very excited to talk to you about, obviously what you're doing with Uncle Charlie Marketing. You guys work with a lot of baseball teams, independent leagues, which people don't realize how many there are, and especially after Rob Manfred and the MLB decided to pretty much like get rid of however many. I don't even remember the number anymore. Unfortunately, you might know it off the top of your head, but however many, so many teams can only have so many minor league teams attached to them now. Used to be rookie and high A and little A and super little A, and like they'd had like 15 teams, and now I think they're only allowed to have 4. So all these teams in all these small towns across America, like it just kind of got axed in some way, shape, or form. So now there's even more independent teams. But I'm very excited to talk to you about that before we get to that part, which we will get to, I promise. You look so excited to talk about it.
I can geek out over independent baseball any day.
Very excited to talk to you about that. But I want to understand your path, your journey, your travel a little bit through social media, content creation. I know you've been doing this thing since high school. You built some big pages, probably sold some big pages, maybe made a couple dollars. We don't have to talk about how many dollars, but hopefully you made enough. What is it about social media? What is it about content creation and generation that you're like, I like this stuff. I like being always on. I always want to be doing something specifically in this game.
Yeah, I think for the same reason we just talked about how unique sports is as a way to connect people, I found that ability to do it at scale. I think the part to me that excites me about independent baseball, for instance, is that these are really hyper-localized communities that these teams are trying to do the opposite of scale. They're trying to like niche down into their communities as much as possible. They don't care if somebody from more than 50 miles away from where the stadium is located even knows that they exist, but they want to be as deeply ingratiated into a community as possible. And that's super powerful. And the impact that can have on an individual or a family or a community is like innumerable. It's it's so cool. On the flip side of that, there's this whole blue ocean of reach or impact that you can have with social media. And I learned that at a pretty young age. There's a guy by the name of Frank Kugel, I'll give him a shout out, who went to high school in Green Bay, Wisconsin, where I'm from. And he had started a Twitter account called I Live for Football. He was 14 years old when he started it, which is reflected in the name I Live for Football. But awesome. He was a high school football player. Yeah, big offensive lineman. Really liked high school football. Really, I think for a lot of the same reasons that we just talked about. Just loved the camaraderie and the community that being on a high school football team brought him. And he wanted to share that with as many people as he could. And I won't tell Frank's entire personal story, but basically his parents had just gone through a divorce, and he really relied on the football team as a sense of community, as a sense of family to fall back on during that really tough time in his personal life. And he, being the really forward thinker at the time, being just 14, 15 years old, thought that he wanted to extend that impact and that reach as far as he could. So he started a Twitter account and started posting simple curated football highlights. But this Twitter account, by the time he was done with the freshman year, grew to over 10,000 followers. And I saw that. I realized it was a local kid, which I thought was super cool. For me, some kid from Green Bay, Wisconsin, I didn't think there was much out past the cow pastures. And so when I saw that he was reaching so many people, millions of people a month, he told me that I wanted to be a part of it. And I didn't have any prerequisite skill to, find clips or post content. I really just had maybe a Snapchat for myself, and that was about it, the extent of my knowledge in social media at the time. But I knew I wanted to be involved because I just thought it was so cool that he could reach so many people. And so I started working with him, and we grew that page, all throughout high school and into college. And this is getting into like 2017, 2018, to like 150,000 followers. And we really built a really cool community of high school football players that, really within their own community saw the impact that high school football could have, but now they're able to sort of connect with other people across the country. And it was just a really cool thing. Not only, I would be lying if I didn't say that it was cool to say I had an account that had 150,000 followers. Like that vanity metric was super cool, but there was also a practical impact of people wearing our shirts or wearing our wristbands and reaching out and saying how much they liked their page, or that they met somebody on another team that they both followed the page. Like that kind of stuff was really, really cool to me. And so I saw that, how you could scale that, really localized impact that sports have, and how you could make it really as big as you wanted it to be. And as soon as that happened, or, it wasn't an instant, but as soon as I saw that play out over the course of my first 5 years going into college, I got bit with the bug of wanting to do that over and over again. And so that's where I ended up all throughout college. I was, running some of these Steam pages on the side. And that turned into people wanting me to work on their social media pages for them. It sort of gave me by proxy this like authority in the space. So I started working just on basic freelance projects all throughout school. I didn't have to wait tables as a college student. I just got to do social media management for small businesses locally. And once December 2020 hit, I was about to graduate, and it was the middle of COVID, and I didn't really have any job prospects. And I looked and I thought, I could probably make up my revenue at an entry-level marketing job by working with these freelance clients that I currently have. And if I found a couple more, I'd be making pretty good money. And so that's what I did. And, by virtue of my interest in being interested in sports, I just sort of stumbled back into working with sports. And, I remember all of my outreach, or a majority of my outreach for new clients or for new freelancers to partner with, was in the sports space. And just by the nature of meeting the right people and asking the right questions, I sort of found myself back in the sports world. And now, having done that and meeting my business partner in the middle of 2021, we started Uncle Charlie at the beginning of that year. And, for the last 2 years, we've been doing all of our business with some really cool sports organizations that have, really localized impact and a really far reaching impact.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I love that. And I think that just the original piece of this, right? That high school football Twitter page, growing it from 10,000 or helping grow from 10 to 150,000. And as you said, you get bit with that bug. You want to do it again and again and again. And it sounds like so much fun. The one thing about social media that is inherently confusing to me, and I'm sure you as well, you are significantly knee deeper in this than I am. Everything changes like constantly, right?
Yeah.
There's a new, now you have to Okay, you're not on TikTok yet? Well, you're already 3 years behind, right? Like there's new platforms that come up. The algorithm changes. Now Instagram really wants to be TikTok instead of being Instagram, and it's kind of annoying. And how have you been able to, over the years, just keep up with the constant changes in trends and algorithms and products and things that are out there? Is Vivo a thing? No, it's actually not. Don't worry, guys. Or whatever the hell that one was for like 2 minutes, right? Like,
Yeah.
how do you actually evaluate some of this stuff and make sure you're actually staying up to date on it to make sure that you're giving the best possible advice and best possible help to your clients?
Yeah, so I'll give you a couple answers. I'll give you sort of the platitude answer, which is really good content will supersede any algorithm change.
Good
and I do believe that, right? I come from a world like even this first football page that I ran was a content curation page, which for those of you who don't exist in social media, all that means is that you're taking clips, that you find on YouTube or that you find on Instagram, and you're just posting them to one Twitter page, for instance. Or, if you're running an Instagram page, you maybe take content you find on other Instagram accounts and you credit them and you repost it onto your page. And so you're curating all of the best football content, for instance, and reposting it. And that, coming from that world, I understood very quickly that if you could find a way to have consistent, high quality original content, you'd be a step above all of the other content curation pages, because you have dozens, up to hundreds at current, and they're all looking for content in the same places. And so if you're only looking for content where they're looking for content, and you're all sort of scratching and clawing for the for the next highlight that drops, you're competing with hundreds and hundreds of different accounts. So in your ability to find new and original ways to format content or to create content, you're going to be able to stand out regardless of if the algorithm is favoring hashtags or a certain number of hashtags or carousels or single images or reels or stories or whatever it may be. That's the platitude answer. I would say the more practical answer is that most of these platforms have increasingly gone towards an algorithmic based feed, or at least the way that people consume content a majority of the time on these platforms is via an algorithm. So I think the best example of this is Instagram. There was for a long time a chronologically based home feed, but in order for you to grow an Instagram theme page, you had to start ranking on the explore page, which was purely based on an algorithm. So it was kind of weighing like, okay, what does my current audience like, but also what will a new prospective audience like? And those signals to get onto an explore page or to get onto a For You page or get onto a trending tab on Twitter, those signals have largely been the same. You have to realize that these platforms are always optimizing for the same thing, which is how do I get somebody to stay on the platform for as long as possible? That will never change as long as social media is around. And maybe the way that they can measure somebody staying on the platform longer is different. As these platforms mature, they have a better understanding of their users, and they understand that, okay, somebody liking a post is not indicative that they'll stay on the platform for longer, but watch time and replay rate and shares, these are all indicative of higher levels of engagement. And so somebody who does these actions will stay on the platform for longer. Therefore, we should serve this content to more people because it incentivizes them to stay on the platform. But if you understand at a base level that all these platforms are trying to do is keep people on the platform for as long as possible, you're leaps and bounds ahead of other people. And then you can start reverse engineering your content for that. And of course, there are like very practical signals that you're trying to optimize for, like you're trying to get people to comment, you're trying to get people to share, you're trying to get people to watch until the very end. But the goal will always remain the same.
Masterclass right there. Hope anyone paying attention was paying attention really well. Taking notes, maybe rewinding. This is a podcast, just YouTube video. Like you could just go back anytime you want. That was awesome, man. I really appreciate the explanation. Totally agree with you on the first part. Good content is good content is good content. Doesn't matter where it is, how it got there. I think that's the important part. The second part is very interesting, right? It is all about how long can we keep these eyeballs on these screens for, because advertisements, the longer you're on the page, the longer you're going to scroll, the more opportunities you have to hit an advertisement, the more opportunity Facebook, Meta, whatever the fuck we're calling them. Sorry. I don't like to drop the F-bomb, but man, do I hate social media.
They deserve
sometimes.
it. Yeah. If anybody deserves it, it's them.
Yeah, exactly. They're just looking for advertisements. They're just looking for money, and they just are trying to kind of get your brain to keep you on as long as possible, so that they can get more of those advertisements. So that is my little, aside on that. Yes, I totally agree with you, and I think it's awesome that you've been able to. And right, like it's not rocket science. We all kind of know this. The longer you're on the page, the more opportunity it is to see an advertisement. But the way you explained it, the way you laid it out, the way you made it a realization, especially younger in your age, earlier on in your career, you've been able to then bang, figure this stuff out much quicker and much easier. Good content, though. I want to go back to that. How do you know, like, other than seeing those metrics of how long people watched or did they watch it again, how do you know what good content is? I feel like that's the piece that you just laid out, that's the science.
Yeah.
The art is the good content piece. How do you come up with this content? Where are you finding that user-generated content that is actually better? Is it just your eyes? Or are they just better? You ask your friends? Is it focus group? Like, how do you – what's the art piece of it?
Sure. So one frustrating point to your F-bomb earlier about Meta is that oftentimes they are taking in, not oftentimes, on Instagram specifically, they're taking in these signals of watch time and repeat rate. These are not analytics that are forwardly available to us as creators, which is frustrating, right? Because it's like a black box. You know that there's an input and that there's an output, and we're left to infer what happens in that black box. And
Is
we
that
can.
why? I'm sorry. Is that why all the food videos that I watch now technically start at the end? Because then they make it all the way back to the beginning, which is really the end, and it gets me to accidentally watch the first 5 seconds over again. Is that
That's
like
exactly correct? Yeah.
Bitches, man.
Yeah, that's
All
just
right. I still love them, but
yeah, that's just a loop technique that they use to get you past that starting line again, so that they can sort of slot another. But it would be great if we could get those metrics, right? Like if on Instagram we could see how long a reel is watched for, and they're starting to roll that out slowly as TikTok does a good job at showing retention rate. But just a frustrating gripe, and I totally feel you. But to your point about content, I sort of want to separate content into two buckets. So I create content on TikTok that's original content, stuff that I spend time scripting out and finding B-roll for and editing in a very intentional way and weaving a narrative or a story into it. That's one side of content, and we can talk about that. The question that you had was regarding user-generated content or stuff that isn't necessarily original or maybe isn't even like narrative-driven or speaking head style of content. That's like an entirely different world. So I just want to make that distinction first, where not all content is created equal. It's definitely much harder, or it takes a much different skill set or a different eye to recognize good content that's original and that's like narrative driven, and the good content that's like user generated or curated type content. So speaking to the curated user generated type content, a lot of the same principles will apply. You want there to be like a premise. So I'll back up. Sorry, I'm making a lot of assumptions here. What people want as they're scrolling through, especially now these highly recommendation based feeds, TikTok sort of totally broke the script on this. Beforehand, you'd have Instagram where you scroll through a chronological feed. You've opted into following all these people. And so you have a baseline of what to expect as you're scrolling through your feed, right? If you see a post from the NFL, you understand that you might be seeing a highlight. Maybe you're seeing a mic'd up clip, but it's not a surprise to you that it's popping up on your feed. When TikTok popularized only scrolling through a algorithmic based feed, the For You page, they introduced this concept of being surprised every time you swipe down, right? And in order to account for people not being so surprised where they're adverse to keep swiping, because there is a bit of like a fear of the unknown when it comes to social. And if you're just scrolling through something that you're like, I don't really know what I'm looking at and I don't really care, then you're going to leave the platform and you're going to do the dreaded thing that they don't want you to do, which is leave the app, which is what we just talked about. So what TikTok did smartly was build in these templates or these trends, these trending audios or these trending templates for how to like set up a joke. And they made it so that creators could very easily, one, create content for their platform, and two, when you're scrolling through it, you could better understand what you're about to get served to you. So if you hear a sound or you see text in the first frame of the video, all of a sudden you knew, okay, I know what this joke is going to be basically, or I know what to expect here. And as you kept scrolling, you kept getting a lot of that stuff. So now all of a sudden on Instagram or on Facebook or on Twitter, you have to be a lot more cognizant about the premise of whatever it is, the content you're posting. No longer is it enough for you to create a piece of content and assume that the people that are going to see it follow you, know what your brand is, and know who you are. Now you have to start weaving in this idea of a premise or this idea of a hook or a setup and get people interested right from the jump. And I'm talking like the first frame or like the first 0.1 second of a video. And you have to set an expectation with them, and then you have to follow up on that expectation. So to answer your question more directly, understanding what a good piece of user-generated content is or a good piece of curated content, it's a piece of content that somebody could understand without listening to the audio. It's a piece of content somebody could understand without looking right at the caption. It's a piece of content somebody could get really, really quickly, and it is in a format that they're comfortable with. So it's the reason on Instagram a lot of times you'll see these like white text blocks over a video, because that's indicative of like a Twitter format. That's something that we're comfortable with. You don't have to jump right to the caption. On Twitter now, you're getting vertical video. You know, that's something that we have increasingly become comfortable with. So it's about providing a level of expectation or predictability in feeds that are inherently unpredictable and that act like slot machines and that give you, you know, a new spin every time you pull down or that you swipe up.
Brilliant, dude. Yeah, this is a masterclass. Hope people are paying attention. I'm in the gambling space, so I understand the slot machine analogy just a little bit better than some other people do. It is a blessing and a curse. That is for sure. I think that's really interesting, and the fact that even the art side of it, it sounds like there's still a lot of science behind it, as you've kind of laid out in understanding that first frame, that first however many, you know, point whatever seconds, and understanding the predictability and how people. I get kind of pissed off because it's such a crutch, but nostalgia, man, everything. It's all like anything's like, oh, I remember that. Like, and that's kind of what it almost sounds like you're describing a little bit, where it's like, oh, I've seen that, so I can be comfortable with it. I know when this audio comes up and it's that little kid saying, oh no, I know exactly what's going to happen. And like, I get it, but it also pisses me off as someone that likes to think like, I don't know, freely occasionally. And like, I don't know, I like to be surprised by things, but maybe it's the brain at work. Maybe I'm just kind of being a fuddy-duddy about it, and in reality, my brain is actually just like, no, please just keep showing me this shit. This is like crack. Yeah,
that's the absolute balance I think these platforms are going to have to decide on at some point. Is like,
they want eyeballs. We already did
they want
part.
Yeah, but I think the balance is in, are we just like an opium drip that gives people super digestible, like brainless content that they could scroll through forever, or are we something that keeps people mentally stimulated and engaged? Unfortunately, I think that as
the answer to this question, get out of here.
Yeah, right. I think it's the optimist in me, but as our intentions, not our attention spans, but as our like understanding of what good content is deteriorates over time. I'm a really strong believer that we're in a race to the bottom right now, and just the worst content will win. And I mean that in the sense that like these trending audios, like somebody lip syncing over an audio and making the same joke that 18 people have made before them, that's not quality content. That's just something that is currently being promoted in the algorithm. But I do think that there will be a time for some people where they're going to leave a platform, or they might consider not using a platform as much because the quality of content will deteriorate so much to where they're just not mentally stimulated anymore.
That is the one thing, and that's I do not use TikTok. I don't like it. I'm sure it would be great if I put clips of my podcast on there, but like it's just the same shit. Like that's all it is, and you're 100% right. And that's always just something that's very confusing to me. I'm not shaming anyone who uses it. Again, we just kind of went through the science on why you're addicted, as you like to use your opium den analogy. But like, I just don't get it. Like, why do you want to watch the same thing, exactly the same, just a different influencer using the same song and lip syncing and doing the same dance? Like, I personally just, I don't understand. Maybe it's me. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I'll stand up for the platform, or for the creators rather, for a second. It's not all like that. Unfortunately, when you create a new account and the platform has no data on you, it's going to serve you the most broadly applicable milquetoast style of content, which is often really, really bad. You know, it services everybody, therefore it services nobody. But as you sort of curate your feed to the stuff that you like, you know, I'm like my TikTok For You page is wildly different than my girlfriend's For You page. And so when we're scrolling TikTok together, it's very rare now that we can ever sit next to each other for more than 5 minutes and be looking at one person's TikTok For You page, because it's like, you know, I think, oh, this stuff is crap, like I don't want to watch this, and she'll think, oh, this stuff is crap, I don't want to watch this. And it's because we've gotten to the point where our feeds are so curated to what we like. And, you know, my stuff tends to be a little bit more like video essay explainer type videos that don't rely so much on trends, or on, you know, stuff like shopping hauls, or on stuff like get ready with me or day in the life. But that's what hers, you know, is, or shows to her. So it's like the platforms do a good job at serving you the stuff once you get to that point. And as somebody that creates there, you know, I also find it as a really valuable tool where I can get in front of so many people. And oftentimes it's like the right type of person for my content. You know, like TikTok does a really good job understanding who I'm trying to reach with the video that I'm posting, and it's scary, and it's also really impressive. And it's obviously been a really, you know, big boon for my business and for my personal brand. But you're right. You also have to weigh, like, what is the impact this is having on me? You know, what are my consumption habits like on this app, and how do those affect, my creation habits, or how do those affect my relationships with other people? Like, these are all things you have to be very conscious of. And unfortunately, I think you're right in this pessimism, which is not enough people are thinking about that. And they're just kind of participate in the race to the bottom, which is, I'm just going to get my instant fix on this trending audio that I've heard 17 times before.
Yeah, I try not to be pessimistic. I believe I'm a very optimistic person. I believe in positivity. I write that word down every single day I have for the last 2 years, right? Like, I'm all about the positivity train. Negativity will get me nowhere. But yeah, man, it kind of sucks. It's kind of like, I am one of the most positive people you'll ever meet. It's just personally not for me. I love YouTube. I spend a lot of time on YouTube. I watch those like 20-minute long, like, are UFO reels? Like, are UFOs real? I watch like anyone that pops up, I'm 100% in. And I like to watch those because I don't believe them all. And I feel like that's something people don't believe in critical thinking. Like, if you just watch a video, it's like, well, this guy said it. Like, it has to be real. And it's like, wait a second. Like, just take a step back and just think of some of the things they said. So that's why I love watching all those, like, conspiracy video, like, bullshit. It's like, dude, none of this is real, but it would be pretty cool if it was. So, like, I love all that kind of stuff. And, hey, that's, a completely different platform, and everything's a little different. And you used a word that I was going to bring up. We are going to talk about your business, too, by the way. This is just a really awesome conversation, so I really appreciate it. Scary. It is a little scary, right? Like, the fact that it is to the race to the bottom, that the algorithms know you kind of better than your girlfriend might, better than your wife might, those kind of things. It's very interesting. And that race to the bottom, like, prank war content, I don't get it, man. What are these kids in LA doing? Like, why? Who's watching this? And why are these? And I know it's children that are watching this, and I get it, but, like, why are they watching it? Like, what about this fake prank is, like even wasting any amount of your time? Like, please, give me some positivity around this, Tyler. I would really appreciate that.
So there's a level of predictability in a fake prank video, or
They're all fake. It's so frustrating.
But
dickheads. Like, that's even worse. They're just dickheads.
Right, but there's like this anticipation of what the reaction is going to be, and you know that there is going to be a reaction, and you're curious on to what that is going to be. And I mean, that's the beauty in all these trending audios, or any trend that happens on a long or short form video platform, which is there is a premise, but then there still is some gray area left over for you to not know how it's going to play out. And that's like the slot machine aspect of it, right? Mm-hmm. Where you know that in pulling the lever, something is going to happen, but you do not know the outcome. You can be pretty certain of it, but you're not going to know the outcome. So I think, to your point, like, it's just promoting that behavior of a continuous scroll. I think some of the danger with TikTok is that there is no end to the feed, and that once you're done watching, and I put that in air quotes because maybe mentally you're done watching, but the decision to just swipe one more time is really, really easy and is really low lift, that you're not actually done watching. And I do draw a little bit of positive to YouTube. I'm a huge watcher of YouTube. I would say that's probably my primary form of entertainment, that and TikTok. Like, not Netflix or linear television. Like, I think the quality of the content on YouTube is like incredible. I mean, it's Netflix level quality when you find the right people. And even that, I'm shopping to watch videos on my homepage oftentimes more than I am on my subscription page. So even there is like an element of like the algorithm knows what I want to watch, and I'm kind of just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling until I find something that I like. But even then, there's like an additional level of friction where I have to scroll and then click into a video in order to watch it. On TikTok, the issue is that it will just start playing right away, and that there's no friction for you to continue to watch and continue to digest. So I'd be skeptical to say that like every platform isn't also turning into some recommendation-based feed where it's impossible for you to stop scrolling, because these platforms are getting really good at knowing how to keep us on the platform for as long as possible. But I think it's going to be in our ability to set up like personal boundaries and personal friction points that the smart people are going to make it out, and the dumb people, I guess, will just be sucked into the void.
Gotta pay for those advertisements. We need those dumb people to watch. No offense to any of you dumb people out there. No, I'm kidding, of course.
They don't listen to this podcast, Michael.
What a guy. This guy right here. I appreciate you, Tyler. Yeah, I just put a 15-minute timer on all my social media apps. It's like super easy. I highly suggest anyone out there does it. I try and get my wife to do it like every single day. When I'm like, hey, you've been looking at that for like 45 minutes now. Maybe, I don't know, we could talk, read a book. Anything else would probably be nice, but yeah, I would suggest anybody do that. And I mean, occasionally, do I turn it off? Yeah, but there's usually a reason. I'm posting something, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I turn it right back on, and it's helped significantly with my mental health. Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah, and I'll ask a question for you, and it's how do you set up the boundaries, as somebody who has a creative profession or has, for me, as somebody who exists in marketing and works on social all the time. And for me, it's been creating content in a very consistent way. And I mean that in a way that I know I can do this consistently for 6 months, a year, 2 years at a time. And I mean that, in the content I make personally on TikTok or the content that I make for clients is like, I have to set up these systems in a way that I know I'm not going to get burnt out, or I'm not going to get overstimulated, or I'm not going to feel like I just have run out of all my creative juice at the end of the week because I've been so pedal to the metal. So like for my TikToks, for example, it means I have a time in the morning where I sit down and I do writing and I do research and I script my videos. And then there's another part of my day where I sit down in front of the camera and I record a couple videos and then I send it off to an editor. And that's all I've done in terms of content creation. And I've isolated the parts that I really like to do. And I do this in my business too. I isolate the parts that I like to do, and I, hire or work with people that like to do the other parts of it. And it's a way that I can consistently create content. And I think we should consider that in our consumption habits as well. It's like, how can we set up those similar sorts of barriers or guardrails or bumpers where we can stay in our lane and we can, stay in a healthy mode of creation and consuming.
And I think for you, especially on the consuming part, right, there's the business part of, hey, I kind of need to see what's going on and what's happening and how it's happening and why it's happening. And then there's just the pure consumption part where you're just like, yeah, I want to turn my brain off for 10 minutes. Like, again, there's nothing wrong with doing that, in my opinion. I think it's probably good for everybody to just be able to take a step back from your day. People have very stressful jobs. I'm not here to judge anyone. I still look at this shit, right? Like, again, I have the timers. I do look at it and I do consume. But at the same time, there's that kind of like separate parts, not quite of your brain, but of your consumption habits. Have you been able to really define those in some way, shape, or form? Or are those lines kind of, especially with the algorithm, kind of blending a little bit?
No, I'm really bad at that. I'll often use
Honestly,
work,
appreciate that.
air quote work or air quote research as a way to justify consumption that's probably, beyond what I should be doing. Yeah, I'm not somebody to sit here and tell people how to set up guardrails around their life, because that's something I'm still very much trying to figure out. But as I talk through again my guardrails for content creation, like to not let that take over too much of my day or take over too much of my life. I think there are very similar rules or strictures that I could apply back into my content consumption habits, and understanding where I'm consuming content, or how often, or in what settings that I'm consuming content are probably indicative of the reason I'm doing it, whether it be for work or for personal pleasure.
Well, hey, we all have to have a good time too, right?
Yes.
Again, I'm not here to judge anybody.
No,
Here,
not at all.
Maybe the idea should be put like put an hour timer on your phone, and if you hit it, then you realize you're addicted, and then you can kind of once you get that piece of awareness that says, hey, you've been on this app for an hour, maybe chill out. Like, yeah, you're right. Maybe I should chill out. All right, so this has been absolutely incredible. Sincerely appreciate everything we just talked about, Tyler. But let's talk about your business a little bit, right?
Sure.
So this is here we go. I set this up by giving people 38 minutes of just you laying it out, giving us the ideas and reasons why you're so great at creating content. Now let's talk about the people that pay you to do that for them. So you do, you and your co-founder, we'll talk about him, I'm sure, Uncle Charlie Marketing. You guys work with baseball teams, minor league teams, independent leagues, like literally businesses, just businesses in general too, not all sports related, but you're working with them too. Talk to me a little bit about this. I mean, we kind of went into it a bit a few minutes ago, but like the idea, finding your co-founder and starting this and realizing like, job market's not that great here in COVID. Like, why don't I kind of just figure out what I can do on my own? Talk to me a little bit about the creation and how this business came to be.
Yeah, so Uncle Charlie's origin story is not the most inspiring one, but in that time of my life where I was thinking about, should I freelance or should I get a full-time job? After I decided to freelance, I was doing my due diligence and looking for clients or making connections on LinkedIn and staying active in the online sports marketing community. And in doing so, a LinkedIn connection that I had connected through a class at the University of Minnesota where I went to school, reached out and said he was looking for help doing social media for an independent baseball league. And he then proceeded to explain where that independent baseball league fell in the broader landscape of professional baseball. And it all went over my head because I had no idea what he was talking about. I sort of knew that there was MLB and minor league teams, and that's about all I knew. And so he explained what it would entail, and it sounded like a lot of work, and it sounded like more work than I'd ever been contracted for with a client before. And so, we talked about what it would look like, and, we talked about how much it would cost, and it very quickly turned into being one of my most paying clients, but also the client that I gave some of the most amount of work for, just by the nature of a baseball league, which is 12 teams playing games nearly every single day over the course of 4 months. And so we worked together on that. Then we started working together on a couple of other clients that were all sports related, just by the nature of the referrals we were getting in the space, which started from the baseball league into a summer hockey league here in Minneapolis called the Beauty League, and then a couple others. We found ourselves doing a lot of business together at the end of 2021, and we said, we should probably stop 1099ing each other every time we get a check, and we should probably formalize this partnership, which is what we did. We did that at the beginning of 2021, and that's how Uncle Charlie was formed. So at the beginning of 2022, totally had my dates wrong. So we started Uncle Charlie, continued to build this client base that we have, and you're exactly right. We work with sports organizations, a lot of governing bodies that are kind of these like faceless, really, before we started working with them, personality-less bodies that just oversaw teams and that were doing really cool, fun things in collegiate and professional sports. And we sort of helped breathe some life into what those organizations could be and how they could develop a voice and a tone and a style of content on social. And it's been a fantastic ride. And I get to do something I love every single day, which is watch sports and talk about sports and create content around sports. And to go back to what we said all the way at the beginning of this call, we get to see this really oftentimes local and regionalized impact play out on a much broader scale.
And that's a really interesting piece, right? So you said a couple different things. Kudos and congratulations for you guys figuring out taxes too, by the way. Great work on both your parts. But no, I kid, of course. But no, in sincerity, right? Like as you said, you're working with like kind of faceless, nameless leagues. Like some people might know the teams. Not a lot of people probably know the name of the Atlantic League Baseball, right? Like that's the Independent Baseball League. I might have even gotten that wrong, but that's the Independent Baseball League that's right around me. We have a Newark team, or at least we used to. There's the Somerset Patriots. Well, now they're part of the Yankees. There's a lot of different teams in this league, which is kind of fun. And like understanding how to give a face and a voice to, again, the governing body. Governing bodies suck, so we'll just start with that. And then B, understanding how to localize it to that market, especially if you're not from the market. I guess let's take the first question and we'll hopefully flow into the second. How do you even give these, governing bodies faces, personalities without putting your face out there on a consistent basis? Yeah.
So I love your anecdote about the Atlantic League. So we work with their primary competitor, the American Association. So I'll stake my claim as they are actually competitors.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah. So, you have a basis of knowledge there, which is always important when explaining the landscape, because if somebody doesn't have a frame of reference, it starts to go downhill very quickly. But before we hop into the broader landscape of independent baseball, a funny anecdote. So we work really closely with the commissioner of the American Association, Josh Schaub, and he's fantastic at what he does. He loves baseball, and he loves the impact specifically that baseball can have on a local community. He really understands the full weight that bringing a team to a community can have. And so he loves to go around to all these different teams and all the different communities. And I can't imagine how much he probably travels during the season, but he seems to always be at a baseball game. And when he goes, he loves to talk to fans and sort of get their understanding of what it is they're watching. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people, think they're just there to watch a cheap baseball game. A lot of people are there because they have a favorite player. A lot of people are there because they fully understand the league and the landscape and the standings and the stat races that are going on. There's like all these different levels of engagement that fans can have, or understandings that fans can have. And one of my favorite stories is he goes and sits down. I think he's in Gary, Indiana, and he sits down next to a fan and he goes, "How are you enjoying the game?" He's like, Good. I've been coming to Railcats games for 20 years. And he goes, "Oh, 20 years. That's awesome." And he goes, "Do you watch any other teams in the American Association?" And the guy looks at him and he goes, "Well, what's the American Association?" And he's like, "Well, that's the league that the Railcats have been playing in for close to 20 years. And he goes, "Oh, no, I didn't know that. I never heard of them. I just, kind of come out and enjoy the games and enjoy the atmosphere." And he goes, "Well, then who are you?" And he goes, "Well, I'm the commissioner of the American Association." And they have this whole like back and forth about, and the point of the story is that this guy can be such a fan of such a team in his backyard, but have no context onto what is going on around him and what's going on with the team, because these are professional baseball players. They get paid. They're playing to win. I think that's one of my favorite parts about independent baseball, which is unlike the minor leagues where, now we're getting the part where I explain the difference. Now, unlike the minor leagues where these guys are looking to get promoted to the majors, and in doing so, they have certain restrictions on how much they can play based on injury or based on teams wanting to get a certain look at a certain guy. So maybe a pitcher will only go out for 4 innings because they want to save him to promote him, or because they want to get another guy in there so they can get a look at him. Unlike the minor leagues, independent baseball is balls to the wall. We're playing to win championships. No holds barred, because these guys are trying to get back into affiliated baseball. That's the minor leagues and the major leagues. And so they're trying to play every single game. There's no rest that they're taking. Like, they need to get as much tape out as possible. And in doing so, they're trying their hardest to play and to win. And that breeds really competitive baseball and really entertaining games and rivalries. The way that these guys adopt like a hatred that has superseded them is really, really cool and impressive and fun to watch, honestly. So, all that being said, like applying a personality or I'll say like a voice to these brands is pretty difficult, especially in the story I just outlined, where somebody who can be such a fan of the product doesn't even know, who's providing the product or who's producing the product. So for us, it was reverse engineering what made all these teams so successfully locally. And that was providing a really unique experience, and uniqueness can come in a lot of forms, right? Like, independent baseball is famous for having sort of these quirky, like, in between inning promotions, but it's also unique in the sense that you can get access to the players that you couldn't get at the major league level, or that it's cheaper than going to a major league game, or that it's closer in proximity to you. Like, uniqueness can kind of show itself in a bunch of different ways. And so it was in our ability to sort of take that uniqueness, wrap our arms around it, and say, okay, now how can we package this and show people across the country what's happening? And so really, I don't mean to simplify it too much, but really all that means is taking a camera, pointing it at the weird thing that's happening, and then posting it and sort of letting that thing fly. And of course, in that, you find out how to better represent those unique aspects of the game, and you find out how to better package them and how to better talk about them. But that's really all it is that there's a product that's happening that is already so differentiated and so beloved by a lot of people that it's just a matter of taking a camera, recording it, and then putting it on the internet.
That is very simple, but most things are, most of the best things are simple, right? The pasta that my grandma makes, it's the best. She only uses like 4 ingredients, right? And I think that's something really important that a lot of people, they try, it's always funny when you see a video and it's just like, this guy just learned how to edit video because he used every single possible effect that you could in this 3-second video, right? Like, it's, right. And you got to learn, right? So I'm not here, bashing anybody like that, but it's always funny when you can see that and be like, this is his first time. Good for him. At least he's trying. You got to respect it. And understanding that the fact that you've been able to, again, your career, you've been in it for so long on all these different platforms, understanding how they work and where things work best, you're able to realize, like, all right, well, what makes this team, like, why do people love this team? It's that weird thing. All right, let's give them more of that weird thing. That's all they want, right? Like, that's literally it. That's all they want, especially the people on the internet. They just want more of that weird thing. As you said, though, you kind of let it fly across the country. When you said that, were you referencing all the other people you would go get business from and say, hey, look at this thing that I did? Or were you kind of saying, like, hey, like, this content can be viewed anywhere? But as you said before, who the hell cares if they're 25 miles away? They're not coming to a game. The only way these teams may actually make money is if they come to a game. How do you try and keep everything so tight to that point? Like, is it worth it to get in front of that person in California when you're in Minnesota? Or is that just kind of wasted eyeballs at that point?
The short answer is yes, it is worth it. The much longer answer is that you have to come at this thing from, I look at it from like picture the earth, and the core is like the center, smallest part of the earth. That was the people that were coming to the games regularly but had no idea what the American Association was. So our job was to start to expand outwards from that core. So we started with a pretty solid core, which we're fortunate with. Most, a lot of companies don't even start with a core of people that buy their product or watch their thing or whatever it is. So our next, part of that core was really making sure we were getting in front of people in those communities that also enjoyed baseball. Like, we recognized there was some low-hanging fruit in these localities that didn't even know games were happening or didn't even know what was going on. Or I would say, even more to our point about the league, like, they didn't understand the context of what was happening. Like, as a baseball fan, you'd like to know that there are stakes in what you're going to watch. Like, sure, there are plenty of people that will go because it's a cheap, family-friendly event, but there's also people that want to go and like understand that these players are playing for something and understand what their story is, understand, you know, how good the team is and how many home runs this player has hit. Like, as sports fans, like, these are all important pieces of context that help us sort of ground our expectations. I don't mean to go back to it again, but like, you want to have some set of expectations like you do on a trending sound on TikTok, where you know, okay, I can anticipate about what the outcome will be. Like, I know when this guy goes up to bat, it could be something really cool and flashy that happens. Or I know when this pitcher goes in, ooh, I should cross my fingers and hope that he doesn't give up a bunch of runs. So we had to instill some amount of predictability, or just at the very least expectation for what people could expect. And that, you know, very simply came in the form of like talking about the standings, or talking about the stat races that were going on, or talking about records that were about to be broken, or talking about the playoff race. Like, all these things that just provide additional context and meat around the product that was already happening was really important in expanding that core out into baseball fans that were located locally. And then as you grow and grow and grow, sure, you get farther away from that core group. You know, maybe you get to somebody in California who is 500, 600 miles away from the closest stadium, but we live in the 21st century, and we have, you know, streaming products that they could always buy, or merchandise that they could buy, or they could engage with us on social and become fans of players that way. So, you know, we recognize people at all stages of this little Venn diagram of ours are important. But it was a matter of working from the inside out, and, you know, servicing the people closest to the center and just kind of reverse engineering our way from there.
I think it's an awesome analogy that you created there with the earth and its core, and understanding like these people are most important. They're coming to the games. They care. The level of how much they care kind of doesn't matter, because we do know they care, and that's important. Now, how do we get the people that are 1 degree away from them, 1 degree away from them, 1 degree away from them, to allow yourself to get as many eyeballs on the product as possible? I guess, what are some of the successes that you guys have seen with some of these leagues and teams that you guys have been working with? Like, what are some of the things that you can point to and be like, hey, we helped very clearly in building this?
Yeah, so I think some of my favorite examples are when we'll get people tweeting at us, or we'll get I'll give you an example of something that happened in person, but to speak more broadly to it, people that take notice of what it is we're doing, right? Because I think a lot of people take for granted, when you look at the NFL or the MLB, and this is something I fall victim to too, you look at these leagues and you're like, they're a bunch of hacks. Like, I hate everything they do on social media. Like, all the NFL does is post highlights of Patrick Mahomes, or all the MLB does is post highlights of Aaron Judge, or stuff. Like, it's really easy to be like hacky and to complain about what it is that they do, but they have an impossible job. That is the people that run those social media accounts. And they're trying their very best to instill like some sort of narrative or common theme or point of interest into, speaking to baseball now, like a very long season, right? Like, you can only post so many videos of a home run, I've learned, or you can only post so many videos of somebody getting struck out before it just gets completely old. So you have to build in the story, and you have to build in like a compelling reason for people to watch. So when people take notice of the unique things that we're trying to do to break that monotony, that's what I love the most. So one example from this past year is we worked, with the media producer that we had. He was our sort of like face of the league, did a daily news show. A really talented guy by the name of Carter Wooddeal. He put together, and we helped him with this, it's called a high leverage show, basically a red zone channel for the league. And so he was switching between games, you know, had the scores pulled up live, and we were live streaming this for free on Facebook and on YouTube, but he was, you know, switching between all the action, cutting into audio, cutting in and out, bringing on guests, like all this sort of really, really cool stuff that people took notice of and said, wow, it's so cool that the American Association is looking to innovate like this. You know, we could have just sat on our laurels and, you know, had our game stream and talked about the, you know, highly anticipated playoff matchups. But we knew that in the last week of the season, a lot of eyeballs were going to be on us, and people were going to want to see how the first and second seed were going to shake out, or if this team was going to slot into the last, you know, spot for the playoffs. And so, you know, we built a lot of anticipation around it, and we did this really high production level show where we were switching between all the games, and that was super cool. And people took note of that and really appreciated how much effort we went into. Or even something as simple as the beginning of this year, you know, there's a schedule release that happens obviously every year. And your local Atlantic League will usually just put out a plain text graphic that says, we've released our schedule, go to our website and look at it. And that's super boring. And that provides like no context or anticipation for what's going to happen. And so, we decided, and this isn't anything fancier, this is not reinventing the wheel, but we decided to put together a schedule that would highlight some key matchups. Like, we should let people know that on this date, the two teams that played in the finals are going to be rematching, or that on this date, two rivals are going to be playing against each other, and that's going to be a game that we should like look forward to. So like we provided some additional context around that. Or before the season last year, we're building anticipation into the season, and so we get the commissioner, we get a film crew out, and we record this like hype video. The premise for the hype video is, you can go to the American Association socials and find it. But it was basically, we were going to have the commissioner do a voiceover for a hype video, and he tries all these different voices. Like he tries to be a used car salesman. He tries to be like a deep Bane voice. Like he tries to rewrite the script, and it's like this little, comedic bit about how he can't get it right. And then we cut to the actual hype video, and it's like just doing creative stuff like that. I think people really take note of and kind of help set the tone for what it is people can expect from us. And it's just a way to like level those waters and say, okay, if we can do this over and over and over again and stack all of these really cool and innovative things, then we become the league that is innovative or does cool things, and that's what people can come to expect from us.
That's awesome, man. That is so cool. I mean, the schedule release especially, people love that. Also, little shots fired. But I love it. I appreciate it, dude. You got to do what you got to do. Hopefully, you just you make fun of them enough, you get their business at some point, right? That's probably,
yeah. Well,
unless there's like a non-compete or whatever, but we don't have to get into that. The Savannah Bananas. You knew this was going to come up, I'm sure, at some point.
Yeah,
I mean, if they're not like the poster child of independent baseball, I don't think there is a poster child of independent baseball. They've literally changed almost like all the rules, it feels like, to the game, and like
they literally
it doesn't
have
really
changed
like
rules.
make sense anymore. And I don't really know how it like slowly over time has changed so much. It's still baseball. But Jesse Cole, if I'm not mistaken, the man in the yellow suit, knows exactly what he's doing when it comes to it and understanding we're independent baseball. This is not the major leagues. People still care. People want to be a part of it. People are here to be entertained. They're not here because Derek Jeter is playing shortstop. They're here to be entertained. How much is too much, I guess? We'll start with that. And then how much can you learn from all the crazy shit that they've done and be able to say, like, maybe we could implement just like the smallest piece over here, just like the tiniest bit. Like, why don't we try and do something like that?
Yeah. So we work with baseball teams all the time, and you'll get one of two answers. You'll get, how can we be more like the Savannah Bananas? What they do is so cool. We need to be more like them. Or you'll get, I never want to be like the Savannah Bananas. What they're doing is ruining baseball. I never want to be like them. Okay. So you have,
dramatic, but I see where you're coming from.
You have two ends of the spectrum. So let's place, on the far left side, the people that never want to be like them, and on the far right side, the people that only want to be like them. For most baseball teams, 99.9% of baseball teams, basically if your name is not the Savannah Bananas, you exist somewhere in between these two spectrums. You exist on the side of MLB baseball, where you don't do any in-between inning promotions on the field because that's too kitschy and you're too serious for that. And on the far right side, you have like the traditional independent baseball model, where it's like people are getting haircuts in the stands, and you have wild pigs running on the field, and you throwing turkeys into shopping carts, and you're doing all that crazy like in between inning promotion stuff. And for pretty much everybody that owns a baseball team or any sports team, you exist somewhere on the spectrum. And I'm okay with you going one way or another. I would say I would advocate for you to go closer to the, I want to be more like the banana side of the spectrum, but you will never be fully on that endpoint, and nor should you be. You can do things that incrementally move you towards that side of the spectrum, but you should never try to be all the way at the endpoint, because the Bananas have literally invented their own game in which they've created their own rules, which allow them to do that sort of thing. And I will note one gripe I have with the people that are on the I want to be like the Savannah Banana spectrum. Nary do they seem to realize that what the Bananas do in terms of pumping resources into making that production happen is incredible. I encourage all of you, if you haven't already, and you're at least interested in the Bananas or baseball or this sort of world, that you go watch their documentary on ESPN Plus, because it's really an interesting peel back. I was nerding out because they gave a lot of airtime to their marketing folks, and their marketing department is like impressive. I mean, like, it's probably double or triple what it is that we have at the League of the American Association. That's for one team that travels with everybody, and all that is to say, like, they've heavily invested into the production. They have a guy that like runs production as if he were, operating like a play or a musical, and they have people that are set up ready to shoot things that they have predetermined. And so when I get people telling me like, oh, we want to be more like the Savannah Bananas, I say, all right, you basically have to get out your checkbook, because what they're doing is not cheap, and they've fully invested into doing things that way. And I think it's really, really commendable. But yeah, I mean, it's like not a black and white thing. I think it's a sliding scale, and I do think more teams, especially in the American Association or the Atlantic League, should move closer to that model. But you have to understand that the farther you get over to that side, it comes with a prerequisite investment.
Yes, and the investment obviously is a lot. I read Jesse Cole's book as well, or at least his first book. I'm sure he's put out a couple. Great book if anyone's read it. I think it's Man in the Yellow Tux, if I'm not mistaken, is the name of it. Really, really cool on kind of how he started, why he started, what he's been doing, and why he runs around wearing a yellow tuxedo. I think it's pretty cool, and it's very interesting just to understand exactly where he's coming from and kind of how the business was built and what they've been able to do. And every year you always I haven't watched that documentary yet. Now that football's over and I have a little bit of time prior to baseball season, I definitely plan on getting into it. But I think it's really interesting that people don't understand how much money they've been putting into it and what they've done to make it so fan first. It's like not even close. Like they took off advertisements essentially, like from their outfield wall, like which. I mean, I don't know, as a fan, like I don't think I'd care that much, but like what the reasoning behind it and everything they're doing is, would a fan prefer to see this or not prefer to see this? If the answer is no, get rid of it. I don't care how much money it was bringing in, we're getting rid of it, right? The dances, the guy that comes up to bat with the flaming bat, like those are like some of the best viral baseball clips like ever. The guy, he had a bat, it was on fire, and he hit a baseball. It was nuts. The guy that comes up on stilts. It happens like 2 or 3 times a year. I love it every time. And it's like, you can't. Nobody else can do that. Like, that's the thing. And I'm sure you talk to teams and leagues all the time. And you're just like, you can't do this. Even if you put the money into it, you still wouldn't be able to do it because there's so much shit. And it's taken so long to get to this point.
Yeah, I would stop you there. Not to say that I agree with you. Teams in the American Association cannot light a bat on fire and come to the plate and do that. However,
wish they did.
I challenge teams to think about it for a second. Like, do they think that some guy just walked up to the plate and had his bat on fire because some divine intervention caused it to happen? Of course not. Nope. They planned for that to happen. They set it up. And in the documentary, you see all the setup that goes into this. And so to my point about like all these resources, I encourage teams to reverse engineer what some of the stunts that the Bananas could look like for them. So maybe it's not lighting a baseball bat on fire, but maybe it's having a mascot go to a certain part in the crowd and they like instigate some sort of like funny interaction between two fans or something. Like, you have to be, the one thing that I respect the most about the Bananas is how proactive they are in filming the content that they film, and setting it up and planning for it. So a great example, they do a piece of content mostly at every game, it seems like, where the pitcher, the 2 middle infielders, and the center fielder will do some sort of dance before the guy throws a pitch, right? And so in the documentary, you'll see the practice that goes into those people setting up and doing the dance. And then you'll see the cameramen trying to position themselves. And again, these are not cameramen that are capturing the broadcast of the game. These are people that they have hired that have their own nice cameras that are down specifically for the purpose of capturing this kind of content. That's an aside. But they'll be practicing where they should be setting up to get the optimal angle to get everybody in frame. And so there's like pre-game work that's happening. And I just challenge everybody to watch the game and think, okay, that stuff's not happening organically. There's work that they're putting in to set it up, and then there's work that they're putting in to have it be captured, have it be done with the intention of the distribution that it's going to have. So they're shooting that because they want it to fit in a vertical frame because they're going to post it on TikTok. Like, that's the level of stuff that they're thinking about is beyond what any team that I've worked with ever is doing. And all that is to say, like, they could be doing it too. Like, they could be setting up these interactions. They could be preparing hired staff that they have to be in the right place at the right time. Like, there is a level of proactivity that some of these teams could have, and they could learn from the Bananas. And that does not look like being in the right place to capture a guy walking on stilts. That's not going to be what every baseball team is going to be. But it could mean being in the right spot so that when the players come off the field, they get a really wholesome interaction with a fan and a player. It's that kind of stuff that I encourage teams and even the leagues like the ones that we work with to look at and say, okay, 1, how can we set these things up so they happen more often? And 2, how can we be in the right place, right time to make sure that we capture them when they do happen?
Yes. And again, they built up to these points. Like most of the time, pieces of content that go viral don't go viral by mistake. Many of the times, there's a lot of thought. There's a lot of foresight. There's a lot of, yes, you have to position the camera in the perfect spot, right? A lot of actual practice and a lot of things go into making sure that this video content is what you want it to be. Because if it was just the guy lit his bat on fire and a bunch of people took out a camera and tried to videotape it, it's not going to be the same thing. It's 100% not going to be the same thing. And as you said, they're hiring extra people, more resources. They have more people in multiples, more people in their marketing department to think these ideas and execute upon them. I think it is so cool what they've been able to do for themselves, for the fans, but really just baseball in general. Like, that's one sport. I love baseball. The Mets are my favorite team. I hate the MLB. Like, I absolutely hate the MLB. They're easily, if it wasn't for hockey being a significantly smaller sport, easily the worst run league, in my opinion, in the United States, and it's like not even close. And it's so frustrating to see the sport that I love, like, just consistently make the wrong decision, whether that's in marketing, whether that's in the CBA agreements, whether that's in, just the dumb shit that comes out of Rob Manfred's mouth. Like, it sucks knowing that this sport that I love so much, like, kids don't want to watch baseball. Like, why would you want to watch Aaron Judge hit dingers? Like, I get that, but that's about it. Like, who cares anymore? It's kind of sad. It's kind of sad.
Can I ask you what it is about MLB and specifically its marketing that irk you so much?
It's just boring. They don't do anything. Like, put someone out there, do something. Like, Shohei Ohtani's on a couple commercials, but, like, I don't know, do more. Baseball players are by far the funniest, absolute funniest professional athletes. You know why? They have so much downtime. They're sitting in the dugout. They're just bullshitting all the time throughout the game. Freddie Freeman, I'm a Mets fan. Love Freddie Freeman. I think he's incredible. He's on first base. You mic him up, and the conversations that he has with people, like, absolutely hysterical. Why am I not getting, like, a feed of that just constantly injected into my veins? Like, that is funny. These guys are hysterical. Just put them out there more. People will start to fall in love with these guys. It's 162 games. Dude, I watch like 100 games, and I think I'm on the higher, like, 1% of the 1% of baseball fans. Like, it's so hard to pay attention and care about every single game, especially now with the expanded playoffs. But just give me more. Give me something a little different. Like, if it wasn't for the best booth in baseball with Ron Darling and Keith Hernandez, I wouldn't watch nearly as many Mets games. Those guys just cracked me up for 3.5 hours every single night when I'm on my couch, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, the issue with baseball, and I often try to avoid this trap of, like, thinking that miking up players is always the answer, and not to, like, throw shade at your idea, because I think
that's one of the many pieces of the answer, I think.
But it's just kind of like a heuristic of, like, okay, if they could do this piece of content better, like, all of a sudden people are going to care about baseball, and I don't think that's true. Like, I think they have much more structural issues of, like, you mentioned lack of urgency, like just hyper regionalization where somebody outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin does not give a crap about the seventh hitter in the lineup, and maybe nor should they, but it's like an issue in the terms of, like, they play so many games, your attention is so spread out, you can only focus on your team, if at all. Like, you're not going to have the mind share to pay attention to, eighth hitter in the Atlanta Braves lineup. But I want to go back to something about the bananas, because I think it brings up an interesting point about these externalities. So the point of Major League Baseball having such a long season that now they're trying to, like, reverse engineer urgency back into the season, whether it be with time limits in games or expanded playoffs to create more meaningful games. What happens with the Savannah Bananas when they are proactive about capturing content and don't sit back and wait for it to happen is that now they have the ability to show and to not tell. And on the other side of that coin, which is the bigger issue, a lot of teams that I see are in the business of telling and not showing. So the fact that they are not being proactive about getting content, whether that be simple interactions with players or a video of a player hitting a home run or what it is like to come to a game at your local ballpark, the fact that they're not actively getting that stuff means that they're in the business of telling you what it's like because they have nothing to show you. They have no way to show you what it's like. And I encourage all of you to go and look at what the Bananas do on social, and you will never find a ticket promotion. You'll never find a link to stream the games. You'll never find some of these very traditional call to actions that you might come to expect with a local team that you follow, or maybe even a major league team, because they have done such a good job positioning themselves as a fun product, which is what they are. And they just continually show you and show you and show you to the point of, they understand if you want to buy a ticket, you know where to buy a ticket. We're smart 21st century consumers. We know how to type into google.com, savannahbananas.com. They understand that if you want to take some sort of escalated action, that you will go out and find that. What their job is, specifically on social, is to create as much awareness as possible and to create as much visual stimulation, excitement, urgency around wanting to participate in the product that they're demonstrating every single night. So I think there are just some interesting externalities, whether that be with the bananas or like we were talking about with MLB. The fact that they have so many games means that they're kind of struggling to put these Band-Aid solutions on what are probably much more structural issues. And I see that with the bananas, where they remove the structural issue of not having enough content to show what their experience is like, and they went out and proactively created those scenes for people to get an understanding of the product or the experience they could expect.
Yes, I totally agree with you, though. Just miking up players is not going to fix it. That's just something I want. That's one of the 15 things that they could probably start to do a little bit more, and I think it would be awesome. And I think it really does center around the players, right? Because, yeah, Aaron Judge is a pretty cool guy. I'm not a Yankees fan, but I enjoy seeing him do incredible things on a baseball field. I also would like to see what he's like, in his personal life and what he does, and what else is he interested in, right? There's just simple things that you could look at other sports. Just take the NBA. You can't replicate it because the NBA is what it is, but take some of the things they do really great and use it. So my question to you, and we'll probably end on this one, Tyler. I've actually interviewed people who work for the teams and their social media accounts. They're incredible, and as you said before, they literally have an impossible task.
Impossible
it is very
job.
difficult. But when they have a strategist, when they have a consultant come in, when and why is that consultant going to be you, Tyler, to help the MLB just fix all of the things that they've been doing wrong? Because after however many years of working independent baseball and showing, hey, look at all these awesome things that I've been able to do with the budget of, peanuts compared to what you guys throw away accidentally, the rounding errors you have in your accounting systems every year. Tyler, when are you going to fix Major League Baseball? At least the social side of things.
Well, I'll fix it whenever they give me a call, but I would start.
I think you're the one that you need to reach out for that call, man.
I need to reach out. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think they're just picking up the phone. It's snowing in Minneapolis. They don't want.
Yeah, they probably don't even think I'm still alive and kicking. But I feel, if we're going to speak specifically to baseball here, that they often feel like they're one rule change or one tweak to the playoff format away from being the sport that they were 50 years ago. And I just saw some data this morning where they've since declined. I think they're falling out of the top 4 of popular sports in America. And that is indicative to me not of, oh, hey, we're one Band-Aid solution away from turning this thing around. There is some structural issue with either how the league is set up, which I don't know if I would have so much control over if they brought me in, but it's definitely a structural issue with how they promote their stars and their games and their storylines. And again, I want to reiterate, the people that work for these teams or the league have an impossible job, especially speaking to baseball. Posting all 62 of Aaron Judge's home runs, by number 13, your eyes are glazing over, right? Because they all basically look the same, right? And then by 62, it gets exciting, 59, 61, 62, it gets exciting again. But 45, that's a boring one, right? So it's how do we reformat? How do we create urgency? And that's really, I see the big issue with MLB is creating urgency around every game, every moment. And I think that's hard without reducing the amount of games that they play. And so let's take that off the table. Let's say that I don't have the power to reduce the amount of games that they play. There needs to be some sort of then narrative that can be woven throughout the season. And I fear that the league or that these teams are putting too much of that burden on their own shoulders. And I would encourage them to funnel that narrative driving or engagement driving through the players more specifically. So the way that younger consumers are now intaking content or engaging with content, I think the MLB is a really astute example, because not a lot of people that I know are Dallas Maverick fans, but a lot of people are Luka Doncic fans, right? Or not a lot of people are Milwaukee Bucks fans, but they're Giannis fans, right? And so it's in these teams and the league's ability to highlight that player that drives engagement around the entire product. And again, I'll say I understand that in the NBA, there can be a possession where one player only touches the ball, and so that highlight can be strictly on them. And Mike Trout might only have 9 chances in an entire game to impact the outcome, be it 4 plate appearances, and maybe he gets 4 balls hit his way sometime during the game. So it's you're dealing with a lot of these structural issues again. But I think the league has to find a way to better set up these players for success and drive engagement of specifically younger fans through the players. You have to allow them to, to be seen and to be known. And, as kitschy as like a mic'd up solution is, that's certainly part of it. In stacking some of those solutions, maybe it means that each team starts to hire a content advisor and that they're helping these players develop YouTube channels. Trevor Bauer sort of on the outside looking in terms of baseball, but he does a really good job with content. I don't, regardless of any accusation against you.
Yeah. Trevor Bauer.
He has a YouTube channel and he has people that know him. Yeah, exactly right. And there are players that I think I know more about. Robbie Rowland is a really good example, who played in the Atlantic League actually last year. One of these guys that kind of bounces around minor league and independent league teams, but he does mic'd up stuff for himself. In an Atlantic League game, he'll do like mic'd up throwing progressions or just warm ups, and like he's really good at making content around his life as a baseball player. And if there was a better process set up for MLB players, because they have the resources individually and as teams and as a league, if there was a way to start to encourage them more and more to do that sort of stuff, and we could induce this groundswell through the players and not have it trickle down from the league, I think that's where it becomes really powerful. Because something that I run into all the time, like running the channel, the social media channel of a league, is by the 8th time or the 3rd time that the league says something, it gets boring, it gets self-indulgent, it starts to lose its luster because, obviously the league wants to promote itself. So if we can find a way for these third parties, in this case being the players, to promote why somebody should watch the game. It doesn't even have to be direct. It can just be, hey, I'm a likable person. Like you said, these personalities are fantastic in Major League Baseball. We just need to give them the daylight and a chance to thrive. And honestly, a lot of these players aren't thinking about that, and rightfully so. They're professional athletes. But if we could set up a system that allows them to showcase those personalities a little bit more, and bring fans as a mechanism through their personalities, I think that would be a really impactful way to grow the game, especially for those younger viewers.
I would appreciate it. I would appreciate it a lot, Tyler. This has been absolutely fantastic. Hopefully after that, I don't know, I can clip that whole thing for you if you want, or you can have it and you just send it to the MLB. I think that would be pretty cool. But it's been awesome, man. Sincerely appreciate it. The absolute masterclass on social media, understanding all this stuff from soup to nuts really has been fantastic. And then really appreciating the way you look at baseball, your business, how you've been able to grow it, and the facts that you're kind of you're essentially, your back's against the wall. You're working with teams and leagues, and no offense to them, I love independent baseball, but it's independent baseball for a reason. And the fact that you guys are able to help create content around that, help create a narrative and awareness around these teams and leagues is just awesome, because I do love independent baseball. There's nothing like it. The tickets are super cheap. The games are usually fun. The beer is beer, and the hot dogs are hot dogs. Like what is better than on like a really nice August night, going out to a ballpark, watching a game, hanging out, fireworks after. Yeah, you're watching the game, but if it sucks, it doesn't really matter. If it's great, yeah, that's cool, but it didn't really matter anyway. Like that is the best atmosphere. Little murmurs throughout the crowd. I want to paint this picture for everybody because it's still kind of cold here right now, but I love it. I love it so much. It is an absolute blast. And yeah, it's right down the road from everyone. Tickets are $12, not $1,200. It's so much easier. You have less bullshit. It's just, they're nice. And I love independent baseball, so I'm grateful that people like you are helping spread that word a little bit, man. So thank you for that, Tyler.
It's the least I can do. I mean, for all the reasons you said, I enjoy it just as much.
That's fantastic, dude. Where can everybody learn a little bit more about what you're doing, maybe your social pages? I'll link everything in the show notes in the description below, but definitely where can they go find out more about you, some of the work you've done, some of the teams and leagues you're working with?
Yeah, you can go to unclecharlie.co to check out our portfolio of clients and work that we've done with them. We're actually rebranding our website right now, so don't hold it against me that it's maybe a little lackluster, but I promise a newer and better version is coming. But it gives a great insight into the type of work we do and the type of people that we work with, if you're interested. Otherwise, I post a lot on LinkedIn, talking a lot about, honestly, some of the same stuff that we were just talking about here. So if you're antsy for my opinions on things expanded outside this conversation, go connect with me on LinkedIn, Tyler Webb, and I'd be happy to connect back and in chat if that's what you're looking for. And I create a lot of content on TikTok as well. I post daily on sports, business, and marketing topics there. And that's really a way for me to scratch my creative itch and get into, more narrative driven storytelling. There's a lot of really interesting things that happen in sports, and it's fun to share some of those more obscure stories. Not always do the sports businessy type stories get the shine I think they deserve. And I think it's a really fun way to call into question, bigger subjects and conversations on things outside of sports by using sports as a vehicle to talk about them. Going all the way back to what we talked about at the beginning of this episode. So Tyler M. Webb on TikTok if you're interested in watching that.
I love it, dude. Thank you so much for your time. Time's the only thing we don't get more of, so I appreciate yours, Tyler, and I sincerely appreciate the audience for giving us a little bit of theirs today. But other than that, man, this has been absolutely fantastic. Absolutely great conversation. But have a great rest of your day, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. Likewise.